I got you.
Oh, awesome.
Yay!
Nice.
Woo!
All
What's
right. Well,
up?
I'm gonna get us started. I'm gonna get right into the show. We're gonna talk to you and talk about your life and your life story and all that stuff, and have a good time. And
Yes.
and that's it. That's the plan.
Let's party.
All right, here we go. Hey, welcome to another episode of the Black Guy Who Tells podcast. I'm your host, Rod. Joined as always by my co-host,
Karen.
and we are live on a Sunday. It technically counts as the afternoon, but it's like, it's still morning, really. And we are here with a very special guest, first time on the show, introduced to us via Mike Kaplan, who we love, one of our favorite people.
He is.
It's Mee Ok Icaro, memoirist, essayist, poet, teacher, plant spirit ally, book doula, life coach, who is living out her ninth life on a planet near you. This is directly from bio on your site. Mia, welcome to the show, and how are you doing this morning?
Yeah, thanks for having me. Yeah, believe it or not, I did wake up like this. This is a little bit early for me, but yeah, I was so pleased to have Mike connect us and everything. I've been listening. I just listened to the most recent episode, I think that Mike was on, just to
cool.
All out, do my little recon.
Yeah. I listened to a podcast that you were on talking about ayahuasca and entrepreneurship and stuff. Yeah, I do my research too.
Talking about ayahuasca?
I guess, to kind of start us off, what is like how did you become an ayahuasca? I don't, is evangelist too far? I saw you saying plant ally. Like, what's the right word?
Well, I call myself like an advisor, and a guide. Although guide is kind of used as someone who like kind of sits with people who are like actively on ayahuasca, and like I don't do that. I help people before and after. I help them prepare, get in the right headspace, that sort of thing, and then when they have their experience and they're like, "What the hell just happened?" I'm someone who can kind of help them process what's going on. And if they had any big like insights, I can help them make adjustments to their lives and figure out really like the direction that they want to take after they've had this, profound, often experience, stuff like that. But I came to ayahuasca because I was like, Mike, I've known Mike for so long. He was like, to me, he was like the mushroom guy. He was always doing the fun stuff, and I was never really into that. I was a big pothead, so I was just like, I'm just gonna chill with this blunt, and you guys can do all that, and I'm good. But I got really, really sick. I got a terminal illness, and I did all of the Western medicine. I lived in Cambridge. That's where Mike and I met in Boston. And I got an incurable disease, and so I was like, I ran that gamut. I did all their therapies and stuff, and I just got worse and worse and worse, and I was in like so much pain I couldn't walk. I was in like an epic Stephen Hawking level wheelchair. Like, it was pretty nuts. I was bedridden for 3 years. I had to relearn how to walk. And they were like, and it's just going to get worse. Here's some morphine, and you can be one of the first people on fentanyl, and all that stuff. And luckily, painkillers are not my thing also.
Right.
And so that wasn't I think I was on fentanyl for a day, and I was like, I think it's gonna stick with weed, man. And and I was getting like, you're about to die weed. Like, it was really good shit. Right. And
how do you get on that list?
Right.
Like, is being about to die the only way to get on that we about to die weed list?
This is top tier right here.
Can I come in and like kind of fake it? Like, oh no, I feel kind of deadly.
No, let's just say I got friends, man. I learned about this stuff called shatter. And, it's kind of like ranch dressing, you can just stick it on anything and it's going to do you right. So I stuck with that. And then do you know who Baron Vaughn is? He's a comic and actor. Mm-hmm. Yeah, he's my bestie. And and he sent me this podcast, because he was really, knew what I was going through. and he was just like, check out this podcast. And it was this psychologist named Chris Ryan. He got really famous. He wrote a New York Times bestseller called Sex at Dawn, which was kind of like about like the evolutionary roots of polyamory. So I bet Mike's kind of a fan of that. But he's written other books since. But he was on Duncan Trussell's podcast. And they were talking about Chris has lived an amazing life. He's traveled all over the world. He like brought tabs of LSD with him when he was traveling, and every full moon he'd go to like some epic place like the Taj Mahal, or just somewhere really grand, and then he would like take a tab of LSD and see what's going on. But he was like the first person, I mean, that was kind of the first conversation where I really heard about using these substances in a way that wasn't just like for fun, a recreation or like mind expansion or something. And and so the more I looked into it, I was like, wow, you can like, these are like traditions by indigenous people of color, and it's been going on for like maybe tens of thousands of years, like we don't know. And right. And I heard some amazing healing stories, and and you hear all kinds of stuff. Like I was scrolling, I was trying to find some Hail Mary pass.
Yeah.
And but this like sounded like legit, and and having this like PhD guy kind of talk about it, and he studied with this like, man, he's such a hero, this guy Stanley Krippner, and he's a big psychologist. He's like 80. He's got like 2 50-year-old boyfriends. Like, dude is a baller. And but Chris is the gay, but he was like his protege. And so they would like travel to all these like shamanic conferences in like Bavaria and South America and stuff, like just doing really wild stuff. And but Stanley did a lot of studies back in like the 60s and the 70s, I think, on like paranormal activity, and like just kind of showed that there's something there. But he's also a skeptic, so he'll also like debunk people who are trying to pull some shenanigans, as scientists call them. Yeah. Not to get too technical.
Charlatans as they go.
Yeah. And so, so I started looking into it, and I actually reached out to him, and I was like, hey, you don't know me, but I'm about to die, and I'm sitting here laying in bed all day, and I'm in a lot of pain, and I don't know, what to do. And he was like, well, I mean, I don't know you very well, but if I were you, I'd drink ayahuasca. So through a beautiful set of circumstances, some very kind people in the Amazon connected me. And so all of a sudden I had ayahuasca in my apartment in Boston. And I was like, all right, let's do this, because you know what, if I'm going to die, like I'm going to die anyway. So, right. Why not? I really, when you have nothing to lose, it's just like, okay. Right. And so I did my research. I talked to some people because I didn't want to end up like even worse off, even though I don't really know how that could have been possible, but and so I drank for the first time in my apartment alone, and like, I don't know, like it really, really hit, and I was like, shit. And I talked to my friend Erin Judge. She's also a comic. She lives in LA. She does The Ripped Bodice with my friend Jenny Chalakian, who's also hilarious. But Erin's husband, he had also talked about mushrooms. So I called his ass. I was like, Jesse, I'm on ayahuasca. What the hell, because I don't, this wasn't like my thing. I'm like a stoner, right. I'm like, this is not weed. Right. This is like for sure not weed, right. And so, so I, part of the way through, I just heard like the voice of God, or like just a voice that sounded a lot like God, I would imagine. They did a great impression of God. And
did it sound like Morgan Freeman?
Yeah, exactly. Just like the wisest black man in Berlin. And told me to stand up. And I was just like, yeah, so girl, I can't walk. Like, right. Sorry to break it to you. And but it was just like stand. And I was just like, fine, I'll like show you that I can't stand. and I stood up so fast. My body was so light that I almost like fell, because I hadn't stood by myself in like 3 years.
Right.
And I was just like, holy shit, Jesse, I'm like walking the fuck around, you know?
Oh my
And
God.
and it was wild. And so I kind of, so I saw the promised land because there was like no pain. My body was free. I mean, I could still feel the limitations of, what the disease had done to my body. But yeah, but in terms of mobility, like the things that my doctors at Harvard said would never be possible, like were happening. And
Wow.
the thing was that, and it was cool because like Netflix found me, and so I got to do like a little feature about it on Netflix, which was cool.
Ooh, yeah. Unwell, right? That
Unwell,
was
yeah. And so, but when the medicine wore off, I went back. And so, but I was
right.
like, okay, but at least I know there's something here that like these doctors
Right.
don't know about. So like I kept drinking, and the whole time I was really focused on just trying to see like what I could do. And when I, because like, they talk about ayahuasca as a being, it's a plant spirit, which doesn't really make any sense in our culture. And, like there's no like real analogies I can draw. It's just kind of its own consciousness. It's its own thing.
I think in America, where we kill off everybody who believes certain stuff.
Yeah.
Then it's like, wow, what a weird belief system. It's like, well, I
Right.
mean, people might think a guy that lives in the sky and the Holy Spirit and a guy that died and came back to life 3 days later.
Yeah.
That would be weird if 75% of people here didn't believe in it, right? So yeah, it is funny how like we can kill off a culture and then be like, man, so weird these people believe in plant spirits, right?
Yes. And also another thing is weird, particularly here in America, because of the way our medical system is set up, it kills anything natural. They want you to be on the medications.
Yeah.
And so when you go, well, I want to do something alternative. I want to do I don't want to be pumped full of medicines, even something as simple as going to the chiropractor.
Yeah.
A lot of times people go to the chiropractor because they're like, I've done fucking everything and nothing else works. So now I'm at the chiropractor to see if you can do anything because I've tried all the pills. Like, so, it's one of those things where if here in America, we go, you got a problem, here's some medicine. We're not actually trying to find the symptoms and actually solve that. We're just trying to mask it.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it's all symptom oriented. There's a lot of investment in sickness. There's really not a whole lot of money in healing. And
Nope.
so, yeah, when you're in a profit driven environment, yeah, it's just the way that it is. And
So for you, is ayahuasca like Popeye's spinach? Like, do you have to drink it? Like if you like, I'm gonna have a big day today. Let me go ahead and take care of this so I can go, I don't know, play basketball at the park.
Yeah, there are times when I'm like, I want to go deep. And so, I'll do, here's the thing though. I am like a lightweight. I am such a cheap date, man. Like with anything, I'm just really sensitive, like I'm like, give me like a at the neck of a bottle of beer and I'm like hitting on your family. Do you know what I mean? It's real bad. And everything except weed. Like I can smoke anybody under the table, but with ayahuasca, people are like, wow, you've been drinking for so long, you've got all this experience. And I'm like, girl, I'm like going to drink half as much of you as you and like have a big night. But sometimes I'm like, yeah, I want, there's something that I need to get to and I'm going to go big. Now I really, I'm working with indigenous people and doing it in a way that I feel like, because they understand it as medicine and they have like a medical system. And there's this whole thing, right, where it's like we, as a culture, we look at things through the lens of like our super basic bitch, like Western medicine's like it's like 100 years old, I mean, like when I think about, because I studied the history of medicine and, I think about how for like 2000 years, there was only one sex. There was only the man and then there were like children, and then there were women who just never fully evolved to male. Like we're like basically women are like, you know, people who like whose testicles never dropped, so to speak, right? And so it wasn't until like the 1920s that we even had our own like language for our own reproductive organs. Like until like the 1920s, our ovaries were called female testes, which is like great, you know. And so in that way, we frame everything through the lens that we know, you know. And so we talk about psychedelics, but it's like, you know, in cultures that never made that taboo, they would never classify all this stuff. They're like, what do you, this is a mushroom, this is a plant, like why are you guys, you know, like they just don't categorize things according to quote unquote hallucinogenic properties. So yeah, so I really like working with these traditions. Like to me, they're like the OG BIPOCs, you know, and it's really cool that they still exist and that we still have access to them. And they have this whole medical system, and it's not necessarily like focused on the ayahuasca. Like the ayahuasca is actually, like I think of ayahuasca as sort of like a venue, because it's really a space that they're able to hold where you can interact with like different plant spirits, different animal spirits, and like all that kind of like pagan animism, right? Of indigenous tribes and stuff, where like the world is alive and not dead and not profane. It's actually sacred.
And also like the other impulses in our medical industry are also about boxing things out so that the other things can dominate, right? Like, like it's a capitalistic system here. So, you know, it's about trying to get that monopoly, trying to get that, you know, I want the lane that no one has. So, you know, it's cigarettes being like, oh, we got to stop vaping. You know, it's like that's not even medicine. It's just like, but this is a threat to us. And until we can own vaping, we think it's dangerous and illegal, unlike our very, very safe nicotine and tobacco. And then the second that they start investing in and buying these companies, it's like, oh, vaping's cool, right, guys? And I wonder if eventually we'll get to that point, because there has been somewhat of a societal in America, societal awakening, or at least open-mindedness now to psychedelics that it feels like was not there even 20 years ago, maybe even 10 years ago. It was a lot of like, oh, dude, weirdo, like what you do, crazy drugs. Oh, you're gonna have a flashback and jump off a building. And now, you know, I was in New York writing for this TV show. One of our head writer the second year was a guy who like got there. That was his therapy. It was like, yeah, I do these. I think it was ketamine trips or something. But it was like if he would have said that even 5 years ago, we'd be like, oh, do you know he's a drug addict? He does ketamine. He's like a straight up. And here we are now being like, oh, and then you had like a trip, but it made you a total cooler person and a better guy to work with. All right, well, shit. That sounds like good drugs to me. I don't know.
Yeah, and also it's the same thing they do with alcohol and weed. Because what happened, particularly with the youth started smoking weed, and they were saying alcohol use went down. Like our generation, we actually drink more on the average. Like they was like, they love us because when we go out, we drink a lot of alcohol, spend a lot of money, and we get drunk. The younger generation, they smoke more weed. So if you have something that's like a bar, they're not really selling those drinks. So the alcohol industry is fighting the weed industry. Like you said, they're fighting the weed industry because it's like, you can't screw up our alcohol sales until we can get the alcohol, until we get the weed in alcohol or some shit like that. And then they be like, cool, we'll monopolize on that.
Right.
Yeah, we turn everything into a market, you know. And you know, and as you know, it's racialized, and you know, but as soon as there's like a path to business, like all of a sudden our morality shifts and our values shift to, you know, worship at the altar of the almighty dollar.
That is facts. Like it definitely is. Like the eye opening always comes with the money. Like this, like it's even funny when we was like, we should legalize weed. It wasn't really a moral argument, right? Like it got moral when it came down to like, well, there's people that are locked up that shouldn't be locked up because all they did was sell some weed. But the monetary argument was the one that moved everybody. It was like, but we could sell it as a state and tax it. We should, like, it's like, oh, okay, now we're talking, and then the wheels start moving, and next thing you know, like New York smells like it smells now. You know, Colorado's like that. Like it's like now everybody's out there. Like and everyone had it the whole time anyway. So I don't know what we were lying about. But
well, yeah, you got people
funny.
being like, you got people, I'm California sober. It's like, bitch, you're high.
Yeah, exactly. I think that's called being high.
Yeah.
You want some? Let me guess. You got the munchies, right? Okay.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's so. Also, like when that first time that you got up, how long were you like walking around before you were like, all right, it's time to sit back down? Or do you remember?
Well, even still, like sometimes sometimes I can be a little bit like a drunk person, just having trouble balancing and stuff. So, not only had I not walked in 3 years, but I was like, on a very potent psychedelic medicine without a shaman. And so like I was kind of having more fun getting up and down, just and I'd like circle my living room a little bit and be like, holy shit. And my dog's like, damn, what are you doing, girl? And but yeah, I mean, it was just great to be able to move my body, to be able to raise my arms, to be able to smile, because my face, I was like a mummy, like I was just turned into stone.
What did your doctors think? Because, on the podcast I listened to, I know you talked about having a really good primary care physician, which is awesome. Like I have one too. Yeah, I feel like social media makes me more appreciative because you hear horror stories all the time. Like, the doctor told me just walk it off, dummy. And you're like, Jesus Christ, where do you go to?
Yeah, this ain't your uncle. Yeah.
Was your doctor like, yes, that worked. That is awesome. Like, what else can I do to help you? Or was it like, what did they think?
Well, I had when I lived in Boston, I moved to Arkansas, and actually I'm moving to Oaxaca, Mexico in a few months. The home of the mushroom. And I'm going to be working with, I'm going to be working with an indigenous crone maestra there and see like what it's like to do mushrooms for real. But my doctor's like just incredible. I mean, she's really like, first of all, she's trans, so she's not just going to be some regular, basic doctor. But she's also kind of a shaman in her own right. She went and got her acupuncture license. She does qigong. She would do like meditations with me and like clearings and stuff. So she's very like, I would go to her for like doctor stuff, but 90% of what we did was like, other alternative, quote unquote, alternative medicine. But she's also like a legit doctor.
Right.
And so she was great, and she was just kind of amazed, and I think she kind of understood the logic, because because Western medicine is like, it's an anomaly, Western civilization is an anomaly. I mean, every other culture has deemed these medicines as sacred and as medicine, and we're like, it's a drug, let's throw people in jail forever.
Right. And we didn't patent this drug, so this is illegal. All right. Until the copyright expires.
We're the ones with like the god that's like a very petulant little jealous, like where you go to Asia and they're like, they're Buddhist, I'm Hindu, it's chill, whatever, we like share the sacred site, like but we're just like, no, they must die,
we need to also control all the laws. It's not just our Bible, we need you to do it too.
Exactly. So I think her studying different shamanic practices and going deep into Chinese medicine, and understanding kind of that logic of the energetic realm and meridians, and just kind of just that whole more holistic paradigm of healing. When I described ayahuasca, it made logical sense to her why it was helping me. And I mean, it was wild because at one point in my illness, I was taking like 30 pills a day, because they just keep piling it on, like everything just sets off something that makes you have to take another pill to
the side effect of this and the side effect of that. Because sometimes, me and Roger talked about this in the commercials, by the time they read the 2-minute side effect, I'll be like, oh, I might as well kept what I originally had.
Yeah. Oh yeah. It's like, I love when it's a commercial for a medicine and the side effect is the thing that the medicine is supposed to help. Where it's like, oh yeah, it will help with because beginning is like you're sad, you're looking out a window, then at some point you take the drug, you're smiling, you got a dog, you're hanging out with your family, everything's cool for like 45 seconds, and it's like, yo, this is finally we broke through on this. And it's like, oh, if you have all the side effects, right? And then one of them's always like thoughts of suicide. I'm like, wait,
yes, that's in a lot of them.
The drug was that was the whole point of the drug. How would I even know that I'm like, so yeah, it is kind of scary. But I think what's funny is, like, if I say LSD, someone will be like, oh, the side effect, it'll make you like see a dragon drive your car off a bridge 30 years later. And I'm like, okay, let's say that is a side effect. Let's just say that 1 out of every million people do that, whatever. The drugs on TV, they're telling you 2 minutes of stuff. Like, it's not even just one thing. And they're like, yeah, you gonna, if you get high blood pressure, if you don't feel like eating, if you get anal leakage or whatever, and you're just like, this is just going and going and
like,
going.
Oh no.
Well, you gotta love some good old rectal bleeding,
right?
Yeah, the thing is, I feel like, in our culture, we're really sort of trained to not think deeply and to not think about the thing behind the thing that's not quite so visible. I mean, we talk about root causes and stuff like that, but a lot of these things are, in a way, it's like neutral, like it's like money. You can use it to donate to help someone who is hungry, or you can use it to, like, buy bombs to, kill people. And these medicines are no different. You can use them really irresponsibly to where you're hurting other people and really making other people's lives less happy and satisfying. But you can also use them to, like, really deal with your shit and, become an easier person to be around and to be just more healed and more at peace with who you are. And, it's all about that unseen context behind it. Right. And so much is about intention. And it's really hard because it is a completely different paradigm, and it does, I think, really require you to move out of your, we talk about, how it takes you out of your comfort zone and stuff, but like to take you out of your cultural comfort zone, to take you out of your identity in a culture where you are that's what you are. Like, right. You're gay, you're this race, you're what, whatever. And the healing is really underneath all of that. And it's not, it's true that you're these things, and it's true that you don't want to, like, spiritual bypass or whatever and ignore what's going on in society. But, the trick, I think, is to balance those two levels of, like, what our existence really is. And that's like hard. It, like, requires
it is. You need that mindfulness. You gotta, like, have a little bit of empathy. Like, it's harder than just like, this is just my stuff and I'm only worried about that, or here's this pill they gave me. I mean, you said they gave you fentanyl right away or first, and you only did it one day. And we look up now, and I mean, it's a crisis.
Yes,
with fentanyl. It's crisis with opioids. So, like, even within the medical industry, where we're calling these people experts, a lot of experts got people like hooked on drugs that like totally disrupted their lives to the point where we had to call it a crisis in America. Like, it was that bad. That's from the medical industry, and yet the fear mongering is still around. Mushrooms, ayahuasca, like, it's like weed, people still fear monger with that. And you're like, I don't know. It seemed like regular drugs kind of scary too. Last time I checked, not people aren't running around with Narcan or whatever because everyone's on ayahuasca trips. It's because of stuff they got,
Yeah, and something else I realized about that, and this is something me and Roger talked about, particularly with the fentanyl and stuff. And we joked about, this is one time racism benefited people because they didn't really get nobody but white people. White people came in there. They was like, here. Yeah. You black, brown, or other, and you walk in there and, like, you are like on deathbed, and they're like, here's some ibuprofen, you'll be all right. You sure you ain't on drugs? Like, they'll accuse you of shit.
It was the idea that, one, black pain isn't real, like you're making it up, and then two, that black people are drug addicts.
Right.
But somehow it low-key saved black people from the opioid crisis just because doctors wouldn't prescribe these hugely addicting things and it messed up a lot of like middle America white people. Let me ask you this about ayahuasca though. So once you tried it and you were like, I can walk, right?
Yeah.
Did you ever take some and then like freak out one of your friends, you know, like, because I think I would have done that. I would have like drank, I would have had them like come up to the house, hang out. I would have drank something before they got there, and then I would just like, you want something from the fridge, and got up out the chair and got like something out the fridge and just handed them like a beer and sat back down like nothing happened, and just see what they, you know, like blow their mind. Did you ever do any pranks with it?
No. I always took it very seriously because I was in a serious situation, you know, and you know, there are traditions like my friend who runs a retreat center that I'm Soltara, which I'm affiliated with. They bring in indigenous healers from the Amazon, and it's like it's in Costa Rica, so it's quite nice. But she recently drank with the Mestizo population, you know, because there's like, you know, these tribes, they've been using it in very different ways. The Shipibo, to me, from what I understand, are kind of the most medical. Like it's a complete pharmacy, like, you know, because again, like I was saying before, like to me, you know, ayahuasca is a venue, and it's like ayahuasca isn't the beginning and the end. It's really a gateway to working with these other healing plants, most of which are not psychedelic at all, don't have any hallucinogenic properties, you know, and it's kind of like I think of ayahuasca in a way as like my primary care physician. And then you have all these other plants that are like specialists, you know, like, I mean, I've known people who have literally peed out their uterine fibroids and tumors.
Oh, wow.
Using these. Yeah. I mean, it's really, I mean, well, you know, it's crazy. Like 25% of our pharmaceuticals come from the Amazon.
Yep.
And yet we've only studied like 1%. And it's like,
right.
Clap, 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 guys. Well done.
Is there any like, I guess the best way to say it, like, is there any like hierarchy in the plant medicine game? Like, are y'all, do people look where they're like, oh, you just on ayahuasca, you don't even know about aloe vera? Okay, so you need to step your game up, player. I see you're new to this.
Well, you know, there are so in the world of ayahuasca, there's something called dietas, and that's kind of like a whole other level of initiation where you are working with a plant in the ayahuasca world. And so there are these things called master plants, and that's how you become a shaman, is that you, and it's so crazy. I mean, it is really strict. Like you are sexually celibate, but again, not in the way that we think of sexual celibacy. Like you are psychically celibate. You are mastering your dreams. You're not having sex in dreams. You're waking your ass up. You are saying no in dreams. You're not eating sugar in dreams. Like you are saying no. And just your full consciousness.
How can you, so you can control yourself in the dream, I guess at that level?
Yeah, you learn.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. So
I feel like my dreams are like on the rails, you know, like, I'm just watching it happen, you know.
Well, you know, it's that whole like, you know, waking up, right? Like, I mean, and it's just being self-aware at all levels of consciousness, including your dreams. And like, you know, when you first hear about it, you're like, yeah, that's not a thing, but you learn. And the plants
I mean, I believe in it because I mean, I feel like everyone's had waking dreams. Like, or for me, what happens is something happens in the dream, and then I'm like, oh, this is a dream. All right, you got me. I'm out of here, guys. I'm gonna wake up and take a piss. This is crazy. I feel like it can happen. I remember when I was a kid, I had a dream that I realized was a dream because it was a slice of pizza that was trying to eat me. And I was like, this is fucking ridiculous. But then I kind of went with the dream, like, oh no, let's go. I want to go on a roller coaster. I want a roller coaster in my dream and everything. So like, I believe it's possible. I don't like, I wasn't knocking it. I was just saying like, wow, that's amazing to have the discipline in the dream to be like, no, a specific thing is I don't eat sugar. Oh, this person, I might be naked in school, but I'm not having sex with anybody. I'm just gonna stay in class and be embarrassed.
Yeah, I mean, really, the name of the game is discipline. It's self-mastery, and like another word for that is just maturity, right? And you know, we've really in our society, you know, again, it just being an anomaly, we've really traded in experts for elders. You know, like you really don't meet very many grown-ups. You really don't meet like truly grown-ass adults in our society. People who,
Right.
you know, really have control over their impulses. People who really, you know, like I try to have cold takes and not just like that impulsive hot take of like I'm going to have an
Yeah.
opinion about this, even though I really just heard about it and don't know anything.
Yes, yes.
But just that maturity, that of that wisdom, you know. So yeah, so we really traded in wisdom for this sort of short-sighted academic intelligence, and
No,
not
and I think it also I I think it plays out in ways that are kind of damaging to our society. Like I'm not, and this is not a trying to just strictly defend like Joe Biden, but the concept of an older person being president, it shouldn't be as like repulsive as people like. People find it like repulsive. Like, what the fuck did he know? And I wonder if other countries that where like if a leader is old, it's like, well, yeah, because they have experience, they have wisdom, they have knowledge, they may have something to impart. Even if we don't vote for them to be a leader, the idea that you're over a certain age, go die and leave the rest of us to do it is kind of an interesting thing. And the assumption is if you're over a certain age, you don't give a fuck about the rest of us, right? It's never the assumption of like, oh yeah, you're 80 and you're doing this because you still care about people and you're civically minded, or you know,
you care about the next generation.
Yeah, it's like, no, you're doing this because somehow you're gonna fuck us on the way out. We don't know what if you want to make money. We don't know why you want to fuck us on the way out, but you did a whole lot just to fuck us all on your way to death. And I do, and I've never thought about that talk. I heard you say that on that other podcast about trading elders for experts, and I was like, damn, it kind of is like that. I'm not saying it's the exact same. Obviously, it's politics. This, you know, it's complicated, but the idea of just old, bad, young, good is very American.
Yes, it is, and for me, it's very frustrating. Because it's one of those things where if you live long enough, you will get old. And when you're young, you don't ever think about one day I'm gonna be old. Like you, that never crosses your mind. When you're in 20, you can't vision 40.
Yeah.
So when you're young, you're like, you're old, you don't know shit, you're gonna die. Your emotions are intense. I'm the only one that ever experienced these things in my lifetime, and can't nobody never help me. And how could you know? It's like, well, I didn't get this age and I didn't live this life without having any type of experience. How do you think I got to be 45? I just lollygagging through life. Like shit happened in my life that I might be able to share with you to help you not make mistakes. But we are a generation, like I just said, where it's a separation where like Joe Biden's age has never been a problem to me. I'm like, as long as your mind ticks and as long as you can do the job, I am fine with that. But it's this thing where everybody harps so bad on the age.
And I said Biden, but honestly, it could everyone old. Like I remember people were saying this about Al Sharpton 10, 15 years ago. Like, why doesn't he just retire? I was like, a person whose life is dedicated to service of against and fighting against inequality, why don't they just retire? Because the same reason why they got into activism in the first place. They didn't have to do that. They felt a calling, and until he feels he's unhelpful or unable to do it, he's probably going to continue to do it. He created a whole network. He's empowered people. It's all this stuff. But the idea of just like you go home feels very American, and it's not a you go home because like you want to. It's a we're sending you home thing. And like I said, I don't know because I haven't lived other places, so I don't know that is a like if that's a universal thing or not,
or if that's
but
just a here thing.
I know just being a Black person in America, it's not our culture. Like we value the older people in our culture. Well, being from the South too.
Yeah, being from the South,
we value the older people from the South. It's like they the ones that know all the recipes to hand down. Like we don't know how to make it without them. So it's a very like there's like a like we hold a little bit more reverence, but societally, maybe it's because of capitalism. Maybe it's because there's a point where you don't produce as much work for other people to siphon off, that we're just like, go home, go be a Walmart greeter, get the fuck out of here,
Yeah, and to piggyback on what you said, something I think about, and what's funny, particularly with Al Sharpton, and it's like for younger activists, instead of asking him, how did you get in the game and persevere so long, you want to get rid of him, which means you're getting rid of the experience, which means you're getting rid of the expertise, which means you're getting rid of the connections, which means you're getting rid of a lot of things. And a lot of those people that told him to get out of here, they are no longer in the game. So it's something about just old people persevering that young people take for granted because they haven't lived life long enough to actually understand what it's like to persevere.
All right. Yeah.
Well,
So,
we also
I feel you as well.
Yeah, I mean, also, other cultures, their old people are different. And, and I think, and in terms of like, Black people in the South, I'm in the South right now. I'm in Northwest Arkansas right now.
Okay.
And it's when you've been through things, like when you're privileged, you can stay a baby forever because, you don't have to like pay rent. You don't have to like do these things that force you to grow old. You've probably been pretty sheltered, but it's pretty protected in a lot of ways. And, wisdom is earned, man. It's experience. And if you've been protected throughout your life through experience, then you may be 80, but you're like a 5-year-old, and I think that's why there's so much frustration among, the younger generations with like the okay boomer generation. It's because this is like the most pampered generation in like maybe the history of the world. I mean, they have just sucked all the resources from birth until like now death. They're hanging on to everything. And it's just like, the best thing you can do as a guest is to leave when it's time, and so, we have this entire generation that is a baby because they've never really done their work.
I think that's a big part of it too, in the disrespect that older generations throw at younger generations.
Yes.
And then they don't understand the return of the disrespect because a lot of the older generation came up at a time when the older generation disrespected you, and that was supposed to be part of like that's growing up. It's like, oh yeah, my father's an alcoholic and came home, he never fucking talked to me, and he just told me get a job or go in the army, and he was mean, and so fuck it, that's the rite of passage. When I get older, I get to be mean to people. And this younger generation, like now, it's like, no, we're mean to you. Fuck you.
Right.
We like
our feelings and how and what
you
we
guys are fucking up
too.
our futures and stuff. And then the other thing too that I think is interesting in a political sense is that we value the unblemished, right? Which is a weird thing because blemishes is also how people learn, right? Like for like specifically Joe Biden, people would knock that his son was on drugs. And I'm like, there's a lot of families with someone that had a drug addict in their family.
Yes.
And they learned a lot from that. One of those things being empathy. One of his sons died. Well, that I don't know why you think that's like a knock on that person. There's things you learn from that. That's things you learn about death, things you learn about life, all that stuff. So like I said, it's not to defend him, more to point out our value system as society is like, that's bad. You're old, that's also bad. This is bad. Like, whereas I wonder if, and also because our society is that way, as you said, our older people are not necessarily community minded in that way in many cases. So I mean, I definitely understand the frustration, but I think it leads to like this value system where the other side of this coin is, here's an older person and Trump, very, very selfish, very business minded, doesn't accept any lessons learned, no blemishes. And we have half of our society being like, that's what we want we want, he's clean to us. He doesn't have any political experience. He just came straight from TV into this thing. And you're like, wow, maybe on a holistic level, that's our value system coming to play is these two kind of weird, I wouldn't even call them extremes to be honest, but these two different weird choices of like, one guy over here that we're mocking and another guy we're mocking for different reasons.
Well, Trump,
let me ask. Okay.
Well, I was just gonna say, Trump in a way is sort of like the great American product. I mean,
yes.
Kind of a real distillation of a certain, level of American values. He's all about money. He's all about asserting his power over women, and and all those sorts of things. And it's like that dude is like made in America. Like he is. He's kind of like one version of the American dream to some extent. And
he's definitely chickens coming home to roost. Like that doesn't seem connected, but it's kind of connected in my head right now because I've been thinking about it a lot. Is OJ Simpson just died. And I I remember as a kid, OJ Simpson's trial was, to me, now looking back, I think that was our last like that was our first most unserious moment as a society, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like this very serious thing happened and it just turned into content. Like news content, your 24/7 courtroom content.
Yes, that was the first time they did that.
All your sketch shows and late night shows were making jokes about this double murder. Mm-hmm. You know, like it was like it before that at least, and maybe it's just I was coming of age and maybe they had done it before, but I definitely don't remember like when the Challenger exploded, it wasn't jokes. It was like this is very serious and it's fucking us all up and we need to have it.
Yes. That was like the first That was like the first national trauma that I remember, you know, because people don't realize the context around that. Like it was such a big deal, you know, like there was a teacher from every school that was nominated to go be Krista McAuliffe. I was a Girl Scout, so we sang a song to her, so I remember her name. Yeah, this face was the cover of the Girl Scout calendar at one point in California. Yeah, a little bit different now. But you know, but like, you know, and at every school, everyone was gathered around the teacher.
Everybody watched it live.
Watched this teacher who we were like, you know, trained to adore, and she was fabulous. She was a great teacher. Right. And then it was like, so what the hell was that just now? And everybody's going home crying and like, you know, and you know, it wasn't just, oh, a spaceship exploded. It was like, no, this was like a PR disaster.
Yes. You had to like, you had like assemblies and stuff. Like we need to talk to everybody and stuff after this. Like it was a traumatic thing, right? Meanwhile, fast forward to however many years later, this OJ's thing happened. I was in class. They were playing the verdict in class, like, which is an insane thing to think about. You know, it's like we as a society decided, like, fuck it, we're not serious anymore, right? We're just doing all that, and I feel like I said, kind of connected in my head to like Trump. You know what I'm saying? Like, like directly from like us being like, we don't need to take things that seriously, right? And to like. Yeah, this guy's like a rapist and he's a terrible business person and he's may have tried to take over the country.
Though.
Yeah, and we're like, but remember his TV show? And like, isn't he funny when he be making those speeches? It's like, we're just incapable of being serious. We don't want to grow up because the adult thing to do would be to look at these choices and be like, these are bad choices. Bring us some good choices. When it, you know, I'm still... remember during the primary of like 2020 or something, and I felt like the Democrats had whatever you wanted, they had one of those people running.
Yes, they did.
Whatever you wanted, you're like, look, it's time for us to have a gay candidate. It's like, cool, Keith Buttigieg, got you right here. Boom. Hey, you know, we need a woman. And then it's like, oh, we got multiple women. Yeah, let's go. I want a black woman specifically. Oh, don't worry, we got you, player. It's right. Yeah, let's go. And collectively, enough of us were just like, yeah, well, it's probably the white guy, right? And it's like, well, we're not gonna we can't complain about the thing we want, and then you get it, and you're like, yeah, but it's safer to go with the white guy. And I feel like that's kind of us. Is like, well, we don't want to like grow up, you know what I'm saying? Like that, we don't want to take it too serious.
Well, you know, when you really default to safety, you're a culture that lives in fear. You know, when you feel really solid, that's when you take risks. You know, that's where you take, you know, and if you're wise, you take calculated risks where you're not going to be, you know, totally flattened out if it doesn't work out. You know, you're going to be very mindful and intentional and informed about it, right? But, you know, I think ultimately what kind of overshadows everything that we're talking about here is that we are a culture that has not reckoned with death. And, you know, it's youth obsessed, but we hide death, you know, I mean, it's like we put makeup on dead people. Like, is that the time for an extreme makeover? You know what I mean? And it's like, you know, and you go, you know, one thing that I really value about, you know, this work with medicine is that it is, you know, they call it a journey, you know, they call it a trip. And I love to travel a lot, and I like going to places and you know, around the world, because that is also equally a head trip, because you really see how different and diverse our species can be, and what different things you can bring into life, and what different values you can have, and what kind of different systems of government you can live under, and what you think is possible and what you don't think is possible. And my mother died in September 2022, and less than a year later, I was in Kathmandu at a big Shiva temple where they do public cremations. And and it was so wild because like there were like animals, there were people just like hanging out eating like lunch or whatever. And like you have these pyres where they're burning the bodies, and then like 20 meters over there's like a couple getting married on the temple steps, and it's just like everything is happening there, like all of life. And it's open 24/7 because people are born at all times of the day, people die at all times of the day. And and it was very sacred, and and this is the way they've been doing it for thousands of years. And just nothing was hidden. And I was like, my mother was cremated, and I was thinking like, I left her in that hospice room, and then a week later a bag of ashes got mailed to me. Got lost by the post office too. But
oh wow,
all these people, in Nepal, and I'm just like, right. I'm like, I tell them, my experience and how we handle death, and they're just like, they're, horrified, as they should be. But, it's like, you look at Islam, you look at, Judaism, and the way they care for the bodies, and, and then we just kind of hide it. We're just like, okay, I'm going to get shit faced at the funeral, and I'm going to take a bunch of drugs and whatever, and just to see how people, in Nepal, in like the for the Hindus, the family will, like the extended family will fast for 45 days. They'll only eat one meal at sundown. And then after 45 days, they will have a memorial. And the immediate nuclear family will do that for a year. And they will abstain from alcohol and everything else. And they will like deal with their pain together. And really.
And then when they show up for the memorial year later, they're ripped. Because they haven't had any alcohol, no sugar. They got like 6-pack abs.
They've been through the process. And you making me think about here in America, we talked about this before. America does not allow anybody to grieve. A week at the most, 3 days, 5 days at the most off of work. And America is like, get your ass back to work. Capitalism still runs. Sorry for your loss. Here's some flowers, here's some plants. But, we still have to get this process going, because when people pass, it's a whole process. You have to shut accounts down. Like, it's not simple. And then you're grieving and you're mourning. So it's like something like that. I'm like, wow, if we had something like that here in our country, more people would be less angry, will be less upset, because a lot of people are hurting because we had COVID here in our country, and we act like, oh, well, no, there are people that are still mourning over people that died during COVID, and we act like it's okay, and it's not.
Yeah, I mean, people were witnessing their loved ones die over Zoom from the hospital room over. I mean, and, we do that with the other side of life too. It's like, oh, yay, congratulations, you just had a baby, get back to work, like, and we don't value life. And I think, the grieving that we're doing too is not just, on an interpersonal death level. I think we're really grieving our birthright as human beings, to have a community, to have a tribe, to have a connection with nature. Like we are really atomized here. Is it, it's just like, okay, you're a baby, you better have a 401k, because like, nobody's gonna be there for you at the end. And, nursing homes are not, I mean, I was sick, I was in hospice, I was in a nursing home for a while. And, watch out, because that is not a place you want to be, like it is.
No, it's not
real bad. I mean, hospices are great because like, it's like, oh, you need more drugs to die? Okay, great, Right. But I mean, nursing homes are a nightmare. They're businesses, everything is being turned into a business. We live in a narcissistic culture. And, one of those things, I mean, this is why I really loved Anthony Bourdain, was because he was really teaching folks how to be a good guest, and in a place where we feel so entitled that we own everything, and we go to another country. Why aren't people speaking English? Well, guess what, bitch? They don't speak English in this country. like
Right.
maybe you can pick up some like Pimsleur or something, or like, Duolingo and do a little bit of work yourself, and you'll see that it's really not easy to learn another language,
Nope, it's not.
Yeah, but we really just expect the world to revolve around us because we've been so dominant for so long. And yeah, like just to practice the humility and go to these other cultures and try to be a good guest and really try to learn and see what values they have, and just see like, wow, these are some of the poorest people I've ever met and some of the happiest. Like, what's going on here?
What's the biggest like breakthrough you had with ayahuasca, or any other like psychedelics that you were like, okay, this is a thing that maybe I wasn't grasping before, or maybe didn't appreciate before, or just didn't view this way before?
Yeah, I think it was really getting an entry into spirituality, because I really believe that you need to believe in your experience. That's what people believe. That's what shatters all of our preconceived notions and our assumptions about the world. Is it's like, you meet a gay person and you're like, wow, this is like a decent person. They're like super honest and like fun, and they're not like anything that I've been taught, right, to think about them.
Right.
That's how people's minds change, and so so I'm a big believer in just having as many experiences as you can, because that's really going to challenge your mind and the sort of unconscious way that you go through life, right? And I was raised super evangelical. I mean, the adoption world is super gnarly. It's talk about a market, right? And so I was adopted when we were on sale. Korea was having a sale.
What?
And oh yeah,
they have sales. Is that for real, or you made that up?
No, there's a market. The most expensive children are Japanese. The least expensive are, I'm sorry to say, but Black babies. They are.
I mean, we assume, assume.
Yeah, and the U.S. is unique in that they are the only country that both imports and exports, because we don't want to adopt our own Black children.
Right.
So we export them, but we're gonna adopt them.
Which is super ironic, knowing the history of America and how much they valued Black children a long time ago, like more than any other type of children. And now they're like, guys, buy one, get one free. Our Black babies, go. Guys, all must go. All must go.
Well, they didn't value them as children.
Right, exactly. It was just as soon as they were a commodity, it was like, yo, you can't. The price is going up on these Black kids. You gotta hurry up. And now
the price of the brick going up.
Yeah, now that people got rights and shit, they're like, guys, MLK Day sale, all the Black children free at last.
Yeah, I mean, and that's part of our narcissism as well. I mean, it's well and good to care about your family, but really the problem is that we really need to care about all families. We need to care about all communities, whether or not they look like us or remind us of our aunties, or whatever it is. And so I was adopted by white evangelicals because that's sort of a cultural value for them. I mean, in a way, it's sort of like a reverse missionary. It's like, oh, we don't have to go over there and convert them. We can just like grandfather them in here.
Right.
And so I was raised very sheltered and very evangelical. Like, I mean, they made us go like door to door and try to convert people, and kind of Jehovah's Witness style, but much.
What part of the country was this?
This was in Northern California and Arkansas.
Okay.
Yeah.
Wow.
And so, yeah, I mean, it was real. It was real. And so, at some point I was like, you know what? I think this might be bullshit. And, and I was like, coming into my super gayness and all of these things at the same time. And I was like, man, this doesn't feel like true, to what I'm experiencing. This feels really limiting. There were some like scandals in my churches and stuff. And I was just like, but wait a minute, I thought we were supposed to be like good, like what's going on? So I kind of did that, like, punk rock, teenage thing. So then I was just like a stone cold, kind of Richard Dawkins type atheist, although recently made some comments about Christianity, but anyway, but I was just like, there is no God, blah blah blah, like Trent Reznor, like, let's do this. And then when I drank ayahuasca, I saw how much spiritual trauma I had. And, I mean, because it is child abuse. I mean, it's sort of like a spiritual rape, in a way. So you're like, I don't want anything to do with that. And you don't realize that there's like a really loving, connecting way to do that. And, with, religion and stuff, and just to realize that you can be empowered to have your own spirituality, and it can be whatever you want. It can be whatever illuminates your lived experience here. And so that was the most profound thing, was just like, wow, to actually have that experience with, some sort of divinity was like, seismically shifting for me.
Now that sounds cool, because like there's a lot of stuff in religion that just covers up bad shit, right? Like it's just like, because it's this idea of like, well, it needs to be pristine, and if we admit that anything bad happens under this, then we have to start like the whole thing comes apart. So we got to move the priest to a different place. The child's gay, we got to throw him in a camp, dog. Sorry, but we can't be having no gay kids. That goes against what we said earlier.
Yeah.
And I think the violence that is done to people under that, I mean, it does make you rebellious. It's, and it's hard, I think, for people to get to a place where it's not, because I think there's like, in the atheist camp, right? There's like divisions, right? And I feel like there's at the start, for most people, I think it's an angry atheism. It's a very like, fuck those guys and fuck what they did and fuck, and there's stuff to that. Like, I'm not trying to deny. I'm not decrying. I think a lot of where
so much,
exactly.
world is from like, religion. It's in the name of religion.
Exactly. So you're like, you're awakening to it, but you're also very upset because you've been indoctrinated by it, or it put these parameters on your life, and people still live with that guilt, even after, people have a lot of guilt, especially in America, around shit that's just like, shame. Shame and guilt which leads to anger, right? Because it's like, well, that's a natural inclination. It's like, what fucking I'm mad about? I had to have sex. What's wrong with me? It's like, I don't know. Every human being has a biological imperative, just about. But okay, cool. And I feel like coming out of that stuff, that awakening, however you get it, there's like another adjustment, because at least for me, there's another adjustment that's like, I don't know, man, it's a hell of a coincidence, this whole life thing. I don't know what the probability is, but it got to be something. I don't know what's out there. I don't know if it's something you read in a book, or that King James or Donald Trump sells you, or whatever. I just figure it's probably something, because it's just such a crazy coincidence that we're here and it works this way.
Well, again, it's about getting to the thing behind the thing. I mean, religion started somewhere. A lot of them started as like mushroom cults, and so many things start off as pure, right? And then people get their little, fingers in them, and turn them into something else.
Some enterprising guys like, you know what, we can charge 10% of what they make for this.
You know what I mean? People, they can, this is why we can't have nice things. It's like, we can turn any good thing into something very self-serving, and, originally it can be meant in some way, and then, some nonprofit that was meant to feed the children has been like, some way to like extort money or something, and religion is so old, and it's why it's so important that we be students of history, because to kind of see the human organism over, many, many centuries and generations, to really kind of understand what that means, and to really understand like the origins of things and how they can shift, and especially those things that shift slowly over multiple lifetimes, so that no single, human can witness it. And it's just it gives you the context. And so I kind of saw, one of the shamans really cleaned a lot of the toxic Christianity around me, and I saw like the really like, because for women, and the thing is it happens when you're so young, and for little girls, so much of it is very sexualized. It's like you're
Mm-hmm.
saving yourself for your husband. And and meanwhile, look at this really hot guy who's like often not wearing like a whole lot of clothes, like this beautiful man
Yeah.
who really loves you and
Right.
give you chocolate, on bunny day. And
Right.
and so you have, and in a world where there's not a lot of, who is it? Like Audre Lorde, maybe, or no, it was a black philosopher. I think she recently passed. Bell Hooks. She said that patriarchy is a world created by men in which men aren't allowed to love. And
Yes.
and so in that world, it creates a vacuum. And so, like, wow, a man who loves you like a father, like a brother, and but there's a lot of sexualization for young girls, where it's like, yeah,
Yeah.
to your husband, you belong to Jesus. And like in Catholicism, it's like way more, like it's super creepy.
And even as the adult women, it's still very sexual, right? It's very, watch what you wear, watch the company you keep, because then people won't think you're an upstanding Christian woman anymore. They won't think something's going on. Oh, you're friends with a man? That's impossible. Yeah. We all know that means you're a whore of some type. Like, it's very like sexualized the whole way through. Like from little girl to grown ass woman, you're in a box. It's all because men are afraid. Yeah, it's all because men are afraid of women that aren't under control,
Yes, that's what it boiled down to. Women that are under control. And truth be told, one thing, a shout out to the younger generation. I appreciate them for this, because sometimes I know a lot of us generation give them a hard time, but I appreciate them going, I will not lower my standards. I will not take anything just because you have a penis. I don't want to deal with you and your shenanigans, like, no. And a lot of the men, younger men, push back, but I understand them going, no. I saw what my aunts and uncles went through. Y'all do this thing where y'all go, back in the day, women didn't have rights, women couldn't drive, women didn't have a bank account, women couldn't vote. So no, I don't want to go back.
Yeah. Well, so much of it is, again, just like these this hierarchy of narcissism, where throughout history, if one gender doesn't have rights, then the other gender is entitled, because like this other the half the population is dependent on your income for survival and to do the whole thing, and motherhood and all that kind of stuff. And it's like, well, now that they don't need you, and there's this like resentment and but really it's like, hey, accept the challenge to like step your shit up, dude. Like, hey, it's really about, no, you don't deserve for someone to be with you and to accept, want to move into a basement with you. It's up to us to be a partner that is going to enrich someone else's lives, like no matter what gender or what you're, it's not ideally it's not about you and what you can get. But that's the society we live in. It's about you, what you can give, what you can like contribute to a partnership, how you can make someone's life richer and better, and and to share that journey, to have a travel.
Ideally being chosen in a place where people have multiple choices is a better match. It's a better, like, that should make you more secure that, oh, you had all the choices in the world and you said, I want this person. As opposed to being like, how can I limit your choices as much as possible? Put you in the most dire situation where you need somebody for survival. And you just gonna have to settle for me because I'm all you could get. And for centuries, literally, people have, like, men have felt empowered off of that. Like, well, I'm all you got. Like, your life will be fucked up without me because we have made life to be fucked up. And as women have fought for rights, as equality and wages and all this other stuff, which our Supreme Court is trying to road. As pay attention, as this fight has been fought, you've seen less and less people make it seem like it's some sort of wow, our society is falling down. But I see this as progress. Marriage rates going down, divorce rates going down. The matchups that are going to happen are going to be divorce rates going up. I'm sorry, but the matchups that are happening are more because people have a choice.
Yes.
And they're more positive matchups, I think, than a matchup where it's like, all right, you have to get out of your father's house. You're 14, you're an old lady. And the guy up the street, he's been looking at you. So he's going to come sit on the porch with you for a couple of days, give me a cow, and then you can get the fuck out my house. That was healthier than that.
Right.
That's not healthier. When
Yeah,
go, oh, my grandma and my granddad, they stayed together 40 years. And even though his secret other family showed up at the funeral, they had a great marriage. And you're like, that doesn't sound great to me. So I do think, and a lot of that does stem from like religion being kind of in a weird way stronger than the law, right? Because religion can put like tradition and culture and all the shit into it to where you're programming yourself. You're like, you've been programmed by someone else to put yourself in a box that even a law can't necessarily put you in. Like the law can't make you feel guilty for having premarital sex.
Right.
But a religion can. You know what I mean? Like, oh, you're gay. Like, it may be legal to be gay in your country, but it'll never be legal in a lot of people's religion to be gay. So it puts a different type of box on us that, you have to break. I love hearing that for you, like ayahuasca and stuff was like a good way of like going back and getting that out of that guilt and all that bullshit out of your life in that way. I'm sure it was work and all that. I know it probably wasn't like, oh, I did it today, and then the next day I was fine. But still, it's like, it's still that's like a dope experience, I think, because I really think we all could benefit from that.
Yeah, I mean, I think, one of the things that is really powerful about these medicines is that, therapy is great and talking to people is great, but there's so much of the work is pre-verbal. And, the thing is that, we are a very unconsidered society, and we don't think about things, and we don't even think to question certain things because like it's just been literally grandfathered in. And and to be in that space of newness the way we were as children when things were new, and it's just like, hey, well, wait a minute, that doesn't make sense, and it kind of gets paid over because life must be lived, and it's not really practical to ask those sorts of questions all the time and question the foundations upon which we live in this toxic society. And so, to kind of go into that sort of like pure philosophical space in a way where you're really kind of noticing like, hey, that is kind of fucked up, huh? And like we all just kind of go along with it and like, like how can I change my life to not like be a part of that anymore, and again, and that's work.
I think the first time, and I say this all the time, like there's this thing that bigots say that are always like, I don't want my kid to see something gay because then it's gonna make them gay because they're gonna see somebody being gay or whatever. And of course, it's easy to be very dismissive of that because it's very silly. It's not like I saw something straight and I was like, oh shit, I like women. Right. Like it just like you either know or you don't. But the thing that underneath what they're saying is they're gonna see someone being free, and they're gonna realize I'm not the be all end all to happy. Like me being your parent approving of you, you're gonna see someone living their life who their parents may hate them. They don't give a fuck. They're happy. They're creating content. They're doing this. They're focusing on whatever. And I can't let you know there's another path to happiness. That's not just me deciding if I approve of you or not. And I think the first time you see someone being free like that has such impact on other folks because then you know it's possible. Because when you're indoctrinated into something, you're raised in something, it's like, well, the abuse is normal because that's what we do here. What everyone must go through that. And then you see someone that's like, no, that was all bullshit. And I'm very happy now. And you're like, oh shit, you can do that? Well, fuck, I want to do that. And I think that's how we break each other out of the matrix there.
Yeah, for sure. And that's like one reason I really love what I do with, with the life purpose coaching, is that so much of it is about, people, helping people get to that place where they have the realization of how much agency and power they actually have. And, so often we aren't aware that we're making choices or that there's a choice to be made. Like we're just kind of on automatic pilot, or we feel really you know, like we feel like we have to do things for, you know, we're obligated to or whatever. And, you know, like I always think about when someone says, I can't afford something. And it's just like, yeah, if you're really, really poor, you can't, because like everything you're spending your money on is survival. But most of the time, when people are saying I can't afford something, they're saying I don't value that more than what I'm already spending my money on. Like I am choosing to spend my money on other, you know, like, you know, when people say I can't afford to eat organic food. And I'm like, well, I
Right.
can afford to go to the movies and eat out. That's what I can
Right.
afford to do, because like I'm making a choice, but but there's like this lack of realization that they are making a choice, you know.
Yeah.
Right.
You know,
Absolutely.
like I'm choosing not to have a car, or I'm choosing, you know. And but again, that those things get grandfathered in as just like this lifestyle. And so much of what we have to do that's really, really hard is to examine our lifestyles and see, you know, what it is that we really need. And that's like kind of one of the gifts of financially struggling, is that you actually are forced to see like, what is it that I need, you know, because there's not really extra for all these creature comforts that I really, that would be really nice to have.
Right. Yeah. Oh man, I feel you. That's like you said, it's kind of like that growing up thing, where we don't necessarily produce grown ups anymore. I feel like part of it is definitely like as I get older, I also realize like, oh wait, I'm just 45-year-old, 1-year-old, right? You know, like I'm still
Yes,
like
everybody's dealing with the inner child.
I didn't hit like a magical age where it's like, all right, you
Mhm.
put on the loafers and the khakis. That's it, guys. The video games go away. Like I'm
Yeah.
not hitting that. So like adulthood looks different for me than like my dad goes fishing and I play video games, or you
Right.
know what I'm saying? So like it's still recreational, whatever, but it's just it looks different for me. But the idea of like being grown and having to confront grown things like that, your mortality, and like you know, how we are to other people, what we do to help other people, stuff like that. It does feel like that has been put off and put off and put off and put off, and the bill is just past due with, you know, our environment and debt and the way we've put our children in such dire straits. It really is, it really is this need for like grown-ups to come, the concept grown-ups to like come back. You know, we need that in our society.
Well, you're only as old as your earliest unhealed trauma.
Mm, that's a bar.
Because you know, when you step on that in someone and they trip out and you're like, you are a
Mhm.
toddler, you are a
Yeah,
2-year-old in the
you are
parent,
not healed.
like
Yes.
True.
what's going on, you know. And yeah, and, you know, and that takes work. And it, you know,
Mhm.
and the thing is that, you know, these are not paths, these are not like dirt roads that you're just paving over. I mean, sometimes you can, especially the more the less that you are a minority status, right? There are
Right.
already kind of paths for you. But for most of us, like, you got to get out the scythe. Like, we're going into the jungle and we are like creating the path, and you got to
Yeah.
find what works for you, and what's going to work for a while, you know, it's going to transition, and you got to learn how to like rope a dope, you know.
Yeah.
And again, it's a lot of work, because we are people who would rather like Netflix and chill than actually
Mhm.
deal with our stuff. But you know, but that's ultimately what love is. And
Mm.
you know, you are going to be, you know, using your children and sucking the life out of your children with your trauma and passing it on to them. And so
Yes.
the most loving thing you can do as a parent is to give your children a happy, healed
Yeah.
parent, because that's why we're all in therapy, is because our parents were fucked up.
And like
Mhm.
you're gonna give them something, because you know we got something, and no one's perfect, and you know, like your kid, but it's gonna, that's part of the cycle too, and then they're gonna give their kid something, hopefully not as whatever you gave them. You know, like I always feel like the generational infighting is always funny to me, because it's always like, yeah, but we raised that kid. So like whenever
Mhm.
whatever the thing is you don't like about the young people now, whoever you are, if there's a thing you don't like, it's a
Yep.
thing we gave them. Like for a lot of people, they don't like millennial entitlement. Right. But if your parent is Gen X, like I'm Gen X, you know, a lot of our stuff was
Yeah.
latchkey kids, you know,
Mhm.
a lot of alone
No
time, you
one
know.
has a problem with us. Everyone's
Right.
like, "Oh, the Gen Xers." I don't know.
like we're chill, right?
Yeah, we're chill.
But when we raised our kids, we probably were like, you know what? No one listened to me.
Right.
When I was your age, they didn't think I was important. You're fucking important. I want you to know your feelings count.
You are the most important thing ever.
How you feel at a job, that matters. It's not just having a job, because my parents like, just go get the job. You feel bad, that's what your check is for. Yeah. But for you, you go in that workplace and you feel bad, you fucking go to HR, you let them know it's some things that need to change. And then we pick on them for doing the thing that we're like, that's what you need to do. Then we're like, wow, look at these motherfuckers. They really want to feel good at work. Why are we mad that they want to feel good at a job? Like, why are we mad that they got bodily autonomy and stuff like that? It's stuff we gave them. And I'm sure our parents, whatever their parents must have been like, the war parents or whatever, like our parents' generation.
Silent generation, yeah.
I'm sure that they, whatever the fuck they did to us, to be like, you can be independent. You can come in a house and it was something that happened to them. We're like, fuck, my parents are hovering over me. I can't do shit. These motherfuckers are the worst. I'm 14. I should be able to. And then they said, my kids will never be like that. They're gonna fucking come home from school. They're gonna be relying and then they hated us for it. Like, I just feel like that's that big cycle that we're all living through. Mee Ok. I'm sorry, Mee Ok. I know we told you it was via like an hour 15 minutes. I know we're a little bit over, but we're just having a good time talking to you.
Yeah, it's great.
Okay, if you want to keep going for like another like 10 minutes, let's keep going. If you gotta go, I understand too.
No, it's cool.
Okay, cool. Go ahead.
I got a little, I was thinking about how, again, with history and to understand it, I mean, I study philosophy and I'm a big fan of Nietzsche, Friedrich Nietzsche, the very German. And, everyone kind of lays claim to him because he's such a sneaky, he's such a brilliant writer, but he's very sneaky in the sense that he had this talent for writing in a way that really made it feel intimate, like he is talking to you. Like, it's just like, hey, I got a secret. And really only people like us can understand it. It's like, he like kind of boosts you up, makes you feel special. So everyone kind of, right, left, Hitler, like hippies, like everybody is like, no, he's talking to me. I'm the one who understands the real Nietzsche. So I've read him for quite some time. And, he talks about, instead of like history, to look at genealogy. And it's like, just when the wisdom of like, so, I don't know if you've ever heard about like the 7 generations, where it's like everything you do, think about how it's going to impact 7 generations in front of you. Like we live in like 24-hour news cycles. We're like, what? This doesn't make any sense, and like this clash. The interesting thing about Earth, and this is something also really profound that I was shown with medicine, is that Earth is this really distinct place because there's so many dimensions happening. Like here we have people who like only travel by private jet, and we also have uncontacted tribes, like all on this, blue planet. We have people who never left their hometown, and we have people who, like Anthony Bourdain, like went, everywhere. And so we have people living in like completely different realities on this planet. And so much of it is trying to figure out, what your dimension is, like what your lane. And like, I really feel like, I read this really interesting description of human development, and it really impacted me because it's like, as babies, we start life as humans as like narcissists, because we are like freaks, man. We are like freaks of the mammal world. Like, every other animal comes out like walking and like chilling, and we come out as like these blobs. They're like half baked. Like none of us are fully cooked when we come out, like we look awful, and we're completely dependent. Like if we're left for 2 minutes, we'll die. Right. And so like, ideally, if a woman's body could handle it, we would actually gestate for maybe like 18 months, if we were like other mammals. And so we come out super vulnerable, super dependent, and the world has to revolve around us. We cry, we need to be picked up, we need to be fed, otherwise we're not going to make it. And really the end of life in terms of like maturity is to become selfless and to really, you know, surrender the ego and, you know, be of true service, not just to our own species, but to, you know, all beings. And yeah, and you know, and we have a generation of old people who are still just living for themselves because they were raised by super traumatized World War. I mean, World War II was so nasty. And
yeah, absolutely. Coming out of like people coming out of Great Depression, like there's a lot of like hoard everything. You don't know when this shit's gonna run out. The fucking banks aren't real. Like, you know, like people were just like having these extremely traumatic moments where it's like, which I, you know, I have a lot of empathy for that
famine,
too.
drought.
You know, like as much as, because I think that's the hard thing is like, as much as it's easy for me at least to have empathy for younger people, because it's just like, well, they're younger and they're coming up, and I was young and I remember that. It's harder to have empathy for older people because, you know, coming up, think of them as like, you were the person that was supposed to handle this. But now, you know, but the more I learn about history and reading stuff, the more I'm like, oh no, I'm sure the same way that like I lived through 9/11 and the trauma response to that caused a war and was like, it to this day, all kinds of Islamophobia. Like I watched the fallout of that, and it very much felt like a wow, this can happen. This is the kind of thing you read about, but not the kind of thing you think can happen.
Right.
You know, same thing with Trump and the insurrection and all that stuff, where you're just like, it's the kind of thing that if I read about in some history book, I'd be like, wow, they were tripping in Germany. And then it's happening. Like, what the fuck? Why are y'all doing okay with this? Right. And so now I look at, and I'm like, I have a little more understanding and forgiveness. It's still, you know, you would hope that people would see clearer, but this idea of like coming out of Great Depression, the thing you're gonna hold on to is I need material things at all times. The second I get them, I'm never letting them go. I don't give a fuck if I get old. I'm dying rich, because if at any moment I can't depend on anyone to take care of me.
Right.
And then the same thing for coming out of war and all that stuff that, you know, a lot of that generation experience, but like holistically, I'm starting to, as I get older, it's I actually death. Like my uncle just passed. I had an aunt that just passed. And I just think about how many times my older family experienced that. And it's something that, you know, for me, it's starting to be like a newer thing of like, wow, people that I grew up with are passing that, you know, are in my family, that my older family members. And that's a thing that they've been living with since they were my age. So they've gone through 20, 30, 40 years of having to reconcile with that and think about that and losing people and missing people and carrying on and all that stuff. And I have a newfound respect, but I couldn't have had it without having some level of experiencing that to truly appreciate what they went through for me.
Yeah, I mean, the thing about old people is that they're all orphans, you know, and there is something really like there is like the lights can go out when your parents died. Like it's, to me, I call it like the Obi-Wan moment, where it's just like, oh shit, the dude who's been like taking me on this journey, like my Virgil through the netherworlds of this earth, they're gone. And they like my guide. Well, I'm like halfway through this trip and my guide just died, you know. And you know, it's really disorienting, you know, to like kind of move to the top of that ladder. You know, so they're parentless, and also, you know, they lived in a completely different context as well, where I mean, even like 20 years ago, trauma was not you know, a household word.
Right, you didn't talk about it, you didn't discuss it, it wasn't something that was brought up, right?
And accepting, and also as I get older, accepting that you're someone's God, because it's just not a thing that you think about in that way of like, oh, there's people that are looking at me now as their elder statesman or their example of something or their like goal of something. I didn't take a class for that shit. I don't know. I ain't got no instruction. You know, and maybe that's kind of where you get some of those traditions that have their power and in culture to be like, oh, here's our rite of passage. This is why we do the family reunion. This is why we do. This is why we come together at the funeral and the wedding, and this is to keep having some central cultural moments, which I think we're losing now more and more of as we kind of disengaged for good reason. Not that we need community, but also some of the community shit was so fucked up that people are leave the community, right? We let bad things happen, and it's like, I ain't coming back to this church. Church used to be a hub for people.
Yes, it did.
Now it's not as much. It's because we let too much shit go astray in the church. But the point being, like, as I get older, I see the need for, like, oh, you need a cultural touchstone so that I feel comfortable being an uncle and you feel comfortable being a nephew in a way that I don't have a guide for. So yeah, I don't know. It's making me think about all this stuff talking to you.
Yeah, I mean, there is this point, you know, and I had it where it was just like, wow, I am not like the least among us anymore. Like, I actually have quite a bit of plant experience. I can actually help other people. You know, because I'm not a newbie, and I've had you know, amazing access working with, you know, Harvard guys. I worked with Gabor Mate, you know, in like the Western Front, you know, but I've also worked with these indigenous healers and gone to Peru and lived without electricity and all that kind of crazy stuff. And it was just like, wow, I can really help people. And, you know, and I'm also not like a beginning writer. Like I've, you know, I'm got an agent and I'm working on a book, and I can help other people tell their stories, because it's not just about me telling my story. It's about getting some other voices out there, because I want to hear them, you know, and helping other people tell them in the best way, you know, possible. But yeah, to be able to like kind of, you know, have your kind of Mr. Miyagi moment where you're like, wow, I can really kick some ass now. I've been like waxing cars for a minute, you know?
I think a lot of it,
how many cars are there?
A lot of it happens when we have community spaces.
Yes.
Because that's how it happens for me. It's because I never leave. I understand and I respect people that like mentor and like develop and stuff. I've never been comfortable with it. Even when I know what I'm talking about, I always kind of like a little bit like, yeah, like, you know, you kind of want to do it your own, right? You don't want someone telling you what to do. But like at the same time, like when I'm in community spaces, like even if I just go play basketball, if I'm playing basketball, there's always some young dude with something. I don't know, like it's not like I leave the house knowing, but you know, I've talked to guys, we talked about you know, they talk about dating and they're in college or something, or they talk about you know, careers or voting or something like that, and it's never like a plan. But then suddenly I'm in a space where, because they're looking at me like that, I got to take a look at me like that for a second and be like, oh wait, I do know something about this. Okay, so this is why it's important to vote, and this is what your vote says about you, and this is also the statement you can make, and this is your power, and this is what you can do with that. This is why you should be informed, blah blah. And it's like in that moment, I'm not thinking about it, but I'm fucking unk at that point. Like I'm unk at that point. It's too late, you know. Like you know, but,
you got roped in, sir.
Yeah, but it's like in order to, I'm thinking about, in order to accept those roles, we have to kind of be around each other, and we kind of have to.
That's true.
And around each other. No offense to the internet, but in a physical way, I think,
in real life,
because it's hard on the internet. Not that it's impossible, but it's just a little bit harder for people because there's a filter there.
Well, you also have to have a real generosity of spirit.
Yeah.
You know, teaching is really just sharing and you know, letting the person like do what they will with it, and making suggestions and guiding, you know, like suggesting a book or, you know, something that might resonate with them. And, you know, so much of you know, we really don't do power and authority, especially unchecked, very well as humans. And, you know, so many people, it's like, you know, people have a baby and they're like, it's going to be it's a doctor. And it's like, it's actually a baby, you know, like
it's actually a baby.
Yeah, we don't know shit.
Yeah. It's like, let them, like, why don't you watch and see what they are sort of organically going to be, and help to cultivate whatever the hell that is, you know, and you know, and being a teacher is very similar. It's like, it's not to try to get them to be what you want to be. It's trying to see who they really are and help them become that.
Right.
You know, and help them get to the highest level of that they can, and encourage them and motivate them, and like really reflect to them what their special qualities are, not like what you would like to see them do. Because like, who deal with your own shit, like.
And they're gonna become people. you don't know them yet. They're strangers. They're gonna become like a full person at some point.
Yeah.
So like the goal is to help them reach that autonomy and that personhood.
Yeah.
Hopefully, if you're a good parent, it's not not that it's not cute to see everybody's, dress up their kids for Halloween and stuff. That's very
Yeah,
right.
Oh.
But at some point it is kind of like this is gonna. I think one of the dopest things that that we're seeing is people kind of pushing back against that like idea of like the gender announcement for your kid. Not that it's like wrong. I mean, y'all are blowing shit up. I don't know what's wrong with y'all.
Right. People have died.
But
yeah, it's true.
I remember someone being like, this is kind of inappropriate. You don't even really know necessarily gender of your kid. And I was like, yeah. And also it feels like a cheap excuse to have another baby shower. You're not tricking me. You got 2 gifts out of me.
Yeah.
But someone said in response to that once, they said, well, then if my child identifies differently, we'll have another gender reveal. And I said, actually, that's kind of dope. Like, oh, okay, like we were kind of fucking around earlier. We didn't know. But you said, okay, cool. You want to do this again? You're 14 now? Boom.
You want to do it again?
Like, oh, that's a dope. Like, that's a way to make it positive as opposed to, especially right now in our society. It's a way to take something positive instead of just like, here's a scary thing the government's going to get you for. And you still have if you have a supportive family around you. So it would just reframe my thinking of like, so there's a supportive, I think you said it earlier. It's the generosity. If there's a spirit of generosity, it'll work out way better than this like spirit of control.
Yeah.
I'm going to make you do something.
And you got to be grown enough to be able to just hold space for that. To be able to hold space for like whoever this other person is and whatever energy they got coming out of them. And just not making it about you, and as a final thought, when you were talking, it reminded me of, just another huge anomaly in our culture, which is we do not have a rite of passage.
Yes.
We don't have a bar mitzvah. We don't, I mean, obviously Jewish Americans do, but
right.
Yeah, but every culture, they have a vision quest. They have like some crazy shit that they do where it's just like, okay, before you were like our child,
right,
and you needed that guidance and you needed to be taught right and wrong and you need to be fed, and now you're like usually it's around 14. That's kind of like the big, that's when James Baldwin's first novel takes place. Is like it's such a pivotal time. You're getting your own teeth in, you're not doing the baby teeth anymore, and there's like a sense of who you are, like your archetype, just you as like an actual human being rather than just like a kid.
I blame capitalism because I mean, I guess we can say that for everything, but I was gonna say because especially in America, it was your children are your property.
Yes,
you belong to me. You work for me.
That's why they work the field.
You literally are my property.
You're like a piece of chair,
and you belong to me. And I think if you flip it, ideally to me, parenting is I belong to you.
Yeah.
So you ain't asked to be born,
right?
I'm just here to try to help you get to whatever the actualization.
Oh man, yeah.
That's such a more healthier attitude than the like, I don't give a fuck if you are 30.
I think the deepest gaslighting in the human species, or at least one of the greatest gaslighting, is honor thy mother and thy father. It's like, you know what? I honor honorable people.
Yes.
And if the people who happen to be my mother and father are honorable people, then yeah. But everything, like, why are you going to be honored because you it reminds me of that great George Bernard Shaw, the Irish playwright. He had this great quote that said, patriotism is believing your country's special just for the fact that you happen to be born in it.
Yeah, right.
Just because I happen to be born of these people or raised by these people or whatever, it's just like, it's not about me, but it's so hard for us to just get out of that mindset because everything is reinforcing that. The entire market is built on that. And if we break out of that, we find that we actually don't need like a whole lot of shit that we think.
Everything's ownership in America. You own your spouse, you own your kids, you own It's just ownership. But at the end of the day, you're just renting Earth.
Yeah.
Like you're gonna not be here. So
No,
like,
I told my dog, like, hey, if we ever like end up in a world with dogs, where dogs run the world, like you call the shots, man. But unfortunately, unfortunately, humans are doing this right now. So I gotta take
There's a very good Rick and Morty episode about that.
It is.
Be good to your pets, everybody.
Be good to your pets.
Good pets, man. Yeah. They're good people.
It's Mee Ok, right? So
Mee Ok, yeah.
Because in my mind I'm seeing like two names and I want to be like, oh, me as if like first name, but it's Mee Ok. That's the whole.
Yeah.
Mee Ok, thank you for being here.
Thank you, baby.
Really appreciate you. Really enjoyed this conversation.
This was fun.
And getting to meet you. Mike Kaplan.
Yes.
He's 100% on guest recommendations.
And he 100%.
And can you tell the people like where to find you, where to engage with your work, all of that stuff?
Yeah, you can find me at my professional site with my services is holdingcompassionate.space. That's where I offer life purpose coaching and sacred medicine consultation and advising, as well as writing services if you have a passion to write and get your voice out there in a meaningful way, from from birth of figuring out what you want to write about to getting it published, getting an agent and all that. I love that whole like birth process. Well, I call myself a book doula. I'm also a writer and put my stuff out there. And so there's also my personal website that's about me, not about like what I do for other people. And that's Mee Ok, mee-ok.com. And then all of the social media is available from those places. And also, one thing that I'm doing, talking about, turning around and giving back, is I'm actually starting to facilitate ayahuasca retreats as well, and really supporting people through that process, working with indigenous healers, being like kind of a liaison, explaining what the hell these magical people are actually doing and why it works. And just like really assisting people in the process, because it's so specific and it's really hard to understand, and I can't pretend that I fully grasp it by any means. But I'm further ahead than a lot of people, and I'm happy to share and try to be as helpful as possible. So I do announce my retreats on my Substack, which you can also reach through my website if you want to catch up with whatever I'm doing. And I always try to offer scholarships to BIPOC, because you gotta look out for the community. I'm kind of just getting started now, so not all of the retreats I'm able to do that just yet, because I got to see how the money works and stuff. But that's the dream. That's really, I'm all about accessibility, because I'm a scholarship kid.
That's too, dope, baby. Yes.
And just two quick show notes. I know people showed up and they were probably expecting us to talk about all this rap beef that is happening right now between Drake and Kendrick, and I think Rick Ross jumped in it.
Oh no shit.
J. Cole. I promise we're gonna talk about it. We'll talk about it tomorrow. I listen to everything. I love it. I love this for us. I love that we're living in a time where people are being the opposite of everything we talked about this first hour and a half. They are. I would have
had very little to contribute. If you wanted to like get down and dirty about RuPaul's Drag Race, I could definitely participate in that and be very opinionated.
Absolutely. I wasn't gonna try to throw you for a loop. That's why I was like, we'll do that. So we're gonna do that tomorrow. I know y'all showed up looking for that. The second thing is, shout out to my former coworker Tommy Craggs, who is overseas right now. I think he's visiting a friend, maybe for a wedding or something. And he texted me to be like, my friend who's like a very liberal white person that lives in like some other country, their favorite podcast is your show. You have a weird fan base. And I just want you to know, shout out to that friend. Whoever you are,
shout out to
listening.
That friend.
And
we love our weird fan base.
Ask Tommy about the time he almost gave the whole office COVID. All right, that'll be an awkward conversation. Make them talk about that. And we'll be back tomorrow talking about all that stuff. We appreciate y'all. Until next time, I love you.
I love you too.
Mwah. Bye, everybody.
Bye. Thank